World War II guns used in the Vietnam War. During the Vietnam War, amidst the pop-pop of the M14 rifle, the roar of the M60 machine gun, the rattle-rattle of the AK-47, and the noises of many other newfangled instruments of death could also be heard discharges hauntingly familiar to the many older soldiers that had served in this iconic Southeast Asian theater of war in a bygone era. Retrieved from long-forgotten caches, dusted down, and returned to working order, the Vietnamese battlefield was awash with the weapons of the Second World War. Like washed-up Hollywood action stars, out of necessity or choice, many of these armaments were bungled out of retirement for one last rodeo. Where did they come from? The World War II weapons of the Vietnam War came from a variety of sources. Mostly wielded by North Vietnamese Army personnel and Viet Cong guerrillas, they were either left behind by previous occupiers such as France and Japan, given before and during World War II by countries such as Belgium, Canada, Czechoslovakia, Germany, Great Britain, Switzerland, the US, and other nations, or gathered from old Soviet weapons stocks and transferred to Vietnamese militias via China. Unlike their less technologically developed enemy, who used such weapons more out of necessity than choice, the Americans and their allies were more discerning with their choice of antiquated guns. As such, the World War II pistols, rifles, submachine guns, machine guns, and pump-action shotguns they brought along with them were either modernized versions or were retained in their original form because they were still considered effective. Germany. At the end of World War II, the Soviet Union seized a huge number of weapons from Germany, which they later supplied to communist forces fighting in Vietnam. Among this horde were pistols such as Walther P-38s, which fired 9mm parabellum rounds, Mauser C96s, which were commonly known as broom handles in reference to the shape of their grips. A favorite of the Wehrmacht in World War II, the MG-34 machine gun was used in Vietnam and was extremely effective in an anti-aircraft role against American helicopters, having a rate of fire of 800 rounds per minute and accuracy up to 2,000 yards. But it was eventually phased out as its limited German 7.92 by 57mm ammunition depleted. The powerful STG-44, the first assault rifle mass-produced on a large scale, had been introduced to the German forces in the latter stages of the war, also had a great impact in Vietnam, and the FG-42, one of the rarest weapons which had only been issued to German paratroopers, made a surprise appearance in the jungles of Southeast Asia as less than 5,000 had only ever been produced. In contrast, much more common was the MP-40, a submachine gun that was unique in that it was brandished by both the Free World military and communist forces. The Mauser 98K bolt-action rifle, the most widely produced German firearm of World War II, also saw lots of action in Vietnam until its eventual replacement by the SKS and AK-47 in the 1960s. Finally, the unwieldy PaK-40 anti-tank gun was transferred to North Vietnamese forces in 1955 and was heavily employed in stationary defensive units situated on the Red River and the Gulf of Tonkin. Soviet Russia. Soviet weapons transferred to Vietnam were principally used by the Viet Cong and North Vietnamese People's Army. The Tokarev TT-33 pistol, a World War II Soviet staple, didn't possess a proper safety mechanism and could only be locked at half-cock, meaning that if it was dropped, it was likely to accidentally discharge. The PPSH-41 submachine gun, originally issued to the Red Army in 1941, was another Soviet-made armament that formed the basis of the K-50M, a modified Vietnamese version that was 500 grams lighter because its wooden buttstock was replaced with a wooden pistol grip and a French-style sliding wire. The gas-fed Dekdjadjarv DP-28 machine gun, first appearing in 1926 and modernized in 1944, was a common sight on the Vietnam killing fields where it was well liked for its single automatic fire setting and 800-meter range. It was referred to as the record player due to its 47-round large-pan magazine. Prized for its extremely powerful punch, the single-shot PTRD-41 anti-tank rifle, first commissioned in 1941, was loaded with 14.5 by 114mm armor-piercing rounds and could penetrate armor up to 40mm thick from 100 meters away. Elsewhere, the M1938 120mm mortar, first accepted into service with the Red Army in 1939, and able to launch a projectile at 890 feet per second, was used for explosive shock. Lastly, the trusty Mosin-Nagant also found its way into communist armories, as did a licensed Chinese copy of it called the Chinese Type 53. First introduced into the Russian military as far back as 1892, it was admired for its accuracy and durability and was the most mass-produced bolt-action rifle of World War II. USA. World War II period American armaments, perhaps the most common types to appear in Vietnam, were employed by free world forces while many were captured by the communists. Tracing its original development cycle back to 1896, the Colt M1911A1 automatic pistol was perfected by 1926, when it was adopted by the U.S. Army, remaining unchanged until the Vietnam War, where it was prized for its considerable stopping power. Equally, the Belgian-American designed FN Browning high-power L9A1, which had been produced for both Allied and Nazi troops in World War II, was another valued sidearm favored by the Australian, New Zealand, and also Kuomintang combatants from Taiwan. The Thompson submachine gun, first manufactured in 1928 and a favorite of American gangsters in the 30s, also made an appearance in Vietnam in its M181 iteration, many of which had been put into reserve after the Korean War. This was accompanied by a sister SMG, the much cheaper and easier to make M381 grease gun, which debuted in 1942 and was so called because it resembled the tool needed to inject axle grease into vehicles. At close quarters, the Remington Model 10 pump-action shotgun, first introduced in 1910 as a sporting system, later militarized for World War I, and appearing in small numbers in World War II, packed a devastating punch and was wielded by both sides, albeit rarely on the battlegrounds of Vietnam. On the heavier end, the M1919A1, which used a 250-round pocketed cloth belt, and the M2HB, which had originally been intended for aircraft use, were both Browning machine guns that performed so well in World War II that they were also brought to Vietnam. Other nations. A smattering of World War II guns from other nations aside from Germany, Russia, and America also appeared in the Vietnam War. Some of these were French guns that were left over from the First Indochina War from 1946 to 1954. This included the MAS-38 submachine gun, which was originally wielded by the French colonial police force. The MAS-36, which was the primary rifle used by the French in World War II, was another weapon adopted by the North Vietnamese and Viet Cong guerrillas. Rather uniquely, it didn't possess any sort of safety mechanism. Type 99 and older Type 38 Arasaka, the standard rifle of the Imperial Japanese Army until 1945, were adopted by the Viet Cong early in the war, since many were left over from the Japanese occupation in World War II. In addition, the World War II-era Chiang Kai-shek rifle, a copy of the German Mauser standard model of 1933, which was itself the forerunner of the Karabiner 98K, and named after the famous Chinese generalissimo of the same name, was supplied to Vietnamese communist soldiers. As was the VZ-24, first assembled in 1924, a Czech service rifle that could be found among the Soviet stockpile of captured Nazi weapons that was mainly used by German, Romanian, and Czech fighters in World War II. This also fell into the hands of communist forces in Vietnam, being very similar in construction to the German KAR-98K. As well as this, a Czech light machine gun developed in the 1920s, the ZB-VZ-26, also saw combat in the conflict. A later variant known as the ZGB-33, adapted to take rimmed British ammunition, was essentially a prototype of the Bren gun, another wartime armament that showed up in Vietnam. The Bren, first introduced in the 1930s and chambered in .303-inch caliber, was admired for its simple operation, accuracy, and selective fire capabilities, and became one of Britain's foremost light machine guns of World War II in Vietnam, where a modified 7.62mm version proved devastatingly effective. Invented by teenage engineering prodigy Evelyn Ernest Owen from 1931 and primarily brandished by Aussie troops from 1942 onwards, the Owen gun, a submachine gun which could fire 700 rounds per minute, served the Australians well in Vietnam despite it being a little outdated by that time. With such a mind-boggling array of old arms on display, the Vietnam War was in some ways a miniature version of World War II, fought again 20 years after the event. It was also an opportunity for weapons of a bygone era to show the young guns how it was done.
Just as these tools were invaluable for soldiers, modern tools can help us master our tasks and prepare for the future. This is where our partners at InVideo AI come in to help. InVideo AI is the world's most used AI video creator with over 10 million users across 150 countries. It's the only AI video creator that truly puts you in control. It acts as your sidekick, assisting with scripting, editing, and finding relevant footage. And then, with simple text prompts, you can effortlessly bring your ideas to life. Check this out, I just typed some instructions into InVideo AI to create a video about the history of weapons. Then, after waiting for just a couple of minutes, InVideo's AI created this.
Hey, simple history viewers. Ever wondered how humanity went from chucking rocks to piloting drones? Well, strap in because we're zooming through the history of weapons in just 2 minutes.
InVideo AI made this video from a short and straightforward prompt. Now imagine what you could make with more detailed prompts. You can then add subtitles, or you can edit the videos via the edit command box. You can start creating with InVideo for free and create up to 4 videos. And if you like it, you can upgrade to a paid plan for as little as $20 per month to remove watermarks and create unlimited videos using millions of royalty-free clips. Click the link below and use code SIMPLEHISTORY50 to get twice the number of video generation credits in your first month. Thank you, InVideo, for sponsoring this video.